I was a senior at Georgia Teachers College at the time and managing the dining hall. And Peggy came in. She was a work student just like I was. And she came in for her assignment in the dining hall, and that's when I met her. I assigned her to be a waitress, and I don't remember what the hours we worked out, but anyway, she was a waitress for a while, and then she served food for a while, and that's how we met.
And Mom, do you have anything you want to add to that?
That's pretty accurate. I was from Blunt, Georgia, and Bob was from Savannah, and that was the first time that we laid eyes on each other.
Okay. What was your first impression of the other?
Well, I think my first impression was seeing a beautiful young lady with nice brown curly hair and a very nice figure, I might add. And I saw her walk in, and I said, I don't believe I know this person, so I think I'll get to know him.
And Mom?
Well, my first impression of Dad was not so positive. He was quite in charge of the group that was coming in, that was already there and coming in. And he had gray hair, and it was clipped kind of short, and no beard at the time. And he had on a white T-shirt and had the sleeves rolled up, and had on ragged blue jeans, nice and clean ones, but they were ragged, and had a pencil behind his ear. And I looked at him, and he was all right until all these girls returning from for our second, third, or fourth year would come in, and they would go squealing, "Bobby!" And he would say, whoever it was, he would do this, and I thought it was so silly, and I was not really impressed that very first time.
No, not impressed. Okay, the next one is describe your first date. Where, when, those sorts of details.
Well, I think Mom worked in the dining hall for quite a while, and she was dating some of the boys there at Georgia Teachers College. And then one night I asked her to go out with me, and we had all kind of rules. I mean, you young people wouldn't understand this, but she had to be in at a certain time, and she could only go to certain places, and you could only be seen in public at different places around Statesboro. And I frankly didn't pay much attention to those rules. I had finished 2 years at Armstrong Junior College in Savannah and moved up to Georgia Teachers as a junior, so I never got into all the rules and stuff that read you as a freshman. And I just decided we'd go wherever we wanted to go and have a good time. And I don't think Mom appreciated that very much.
Well, I remember our first date very well, because we were there like the first week in September, and our first date was the 23rd of October. And they were very, very strict at the school. The first month you could only sign out to walk around Sweetheart Square, Sweetheart Circle, and that was within view of all the officials at the college. But you had to sign out, and people had to know exactly where you were going. So when we had our first date, I signed out that I was going to the movies, and I didn't bother to tell them that the movie we were going to was at the drive-in theater.
Whoops. So how much trouble did you get in for that?
Oh,
What did you see?
The movie that night was Dancing in the Dark, and I just thought that was the best movie to go to. One of my many jobs I had to support myself in school, I was the advertising person for the person who owned the 3 movie theaters in town. So I had free tickets to all the theaters, and I just looked to see where the best movie was playing, and that's where we went. As I said, I pay attention to where all the rules and regulations were. Wasn't my problem.
We saw the movie Dancing in the Dark, and it was a really good movie, but Bob was a real good dancer, and that was one of the things we learned to do, was dance a lot. But I was a little nervous about if anyone else saw me there and reported to my house mother that I was at the drive-in theater.
The next question is, when did, and I think this is presumptuous of Judy, I'll have to give her a hard time about it. When did he propose? How long had you dated, etc.?
We dated about 6 months, more or less, and I asked Peggy to marry me, and she said that she would consider it, but I first had to ask her father. And so the next time I saw Mr. Davis, I told him I would like to ask for his daughter's hand in marriage, and he said no. And that sort of took me back a little bit. I didn't get many no's in those days, so I came back to Peggy and I said, I asked your father if I could marry you, and he said no. And we were both a little stumped at that time and weren't sure what we were going to do next.
I'd like to skip back just a little bit. We met in September, and at Christmas time when we went home for Christmas break, the day after Christmas, the 26th of December, which I remembered very well, Mama and Daddy and I were out in the yard, and we were looking at Mama's flowers, and up drives this old 35 Chevrolet, which I knew could only belong to Bo Ware or Bob Ware, and here he drove up. I was not expecting him. In fact, I was kind of dreading when I introduced him to my parents because, number one, they had no idea I was dating him and dating anyone, and the other surprise was that he had gray hair and that he was Catholic and he was Irish Catholic and he was a city boy, and I didn't know how members of my family were going to accept this. So Dad did propose, and he was really cute about it.
Well, you forgot to tell her when I drove up, you ran up and hugged me around the neck and kissed me.
That's a big, big, big story. Only you could tell.
I heard it was the other way around.
It was the other way around, and I was just scared to death because I thought Daddy would just drive him right through the earth.
I was going to ask, did you think your dad was going to go get a shotgun?
I thought anything could happen, and I was really afraid of what would happen. But eventually, it worked out.
I had proposed, by the way, in the, I guess you'd call it the meeting room or the living room or whatever of West Hall, which was a ladies' dormitory in those days. And I had got down on my knees and asked Peggy to marry me. And as I said a minute ago, she said, it's okay with me if it's okay with my father. And then when I came back and said, your father said no, I think she was thinking what she was going to do at that time, right?
I sure was thinking because I had grown very fond of him, and this was in the spring semester, and Bob was graduating in June, so I figured he looked like a real good catch, and if I didn't catch him right then, maybe I was going to lose him when he graduated and went on to greater things. So I had a dilemma whether or not I could marry him and without my family's approval.
And finally, Mr. Davis relented and gave his approval, and we were engaged. And also, Mr. Davis asked that we put it off for a while and let Peggy get her college education and let me get a job, which was kind of important. I thought I did pretty good when I graduated from college. I had a car and some pretty decent clothes in addition to some dungarees, and about $1,500 in the bank in 1951. That was a lot of money in those days.
Yeah.
So I didn't think I was doing too bad, but there was war going over in Korea, and of course the minute the dean handed me my diploma, I also got a letter from my neighbors selecting me to move to 1A in the draft, and I had applied for a commission at OCS in the Navy and OCS at the Coast Guard, and they gave me 30 days to either be accepted or to report to the Army. And fortunately, I knew some of the people on the draft board, and they kept giving me an additional 30 days. So when I graduated from college, I went to work for a crane company as a sales trainee. At the time, I was working as an accounting clerk or something like that, and making a big $50 a week, and living again pretty high on the hog for those days. And we got thinking about what we were going to do and where we were going to go. In the meantime, Peggy went off to the University of Georgia that summer, if I remember correctly.
Right.
I think her family wanted to get as far away from Savannah as they could, and Statesboro wasn't far enough. And then she came to Savannah to work during the Christmas holidays, if I remember correctly, right, and stay with Thelma.
Well, I came back to Georgia Southern.
Back to Georgia Southern
Teachers
in the fall,
College
that's
for the
right.
fall semester.
That's right. And I remember talking with my mother one day, and she said, what is the one thing that you would like to have for Christmas more than anything else? And I said, I would like to marry Peggy, but I don't think I have the money and whatever to do that. And so she said, well, I think Pop and I could help you a little bit. And Gaki Miss Bremer, the lady that lived with my folks from before I was born until my mother passed away, she offered to let us use her car and also contribute a few bucks to the wedding plans. And we decided we would get married December the 26th.
That decision was made. I had come to Savannah to work, and I worked at Lerner's over the Christmas holidays, and I was staying at Thelma's. And when Bob was so excited and he told me about this, the first thing I thought, oh, how wonderful, and then the second thing I thought, and I said, uh-oh, I got to tell my folks. And I didn't have enough nerve to go home and tell them that we were going to get married. I called Mama and Daddy on the telephone, and when I told them how things had happened, they said, well, he gave you the ring in September of this year, and you promised to wait. And I said, well, I don't think this can wait. I think I really would like to have this happen now. And they were very kind of mum on it, and I wasn't sure it was going to come off for a while. But I had decided at that point that we would get married without my family's approval, which would be the first time I'd ever done anything like that.
I think at this point I'd like to mention that Ben and Thelma were very supportive of us and very, very friendly, and I think made me feel part of the Davis family at this time more so than anybody else. And also about this time I had gotten my acceptance to Navy Officer Candidate School and rushed down to the draft board and gave them the letter, and so they gave me the deferment based upon accepting that appointment. And of course the next day I was accepted by the Coast Guard Officer Candidate School, which is the one I really wanted to go to, but it was too late. And at that time they had scheduled me to report to Newport, Rhode Island in